After the almost excellent Toca Touring Cars Championship game that not only opened the gate for the Toca series but later on the Grid series, obviously I had to continue playing the franchise. So Toca 2 Touring Cars was next, or Toca 2 Touring Cars Challenge in the US, because for some reason the EU, US and even Japan at times often cannot agree on just a single title for the same game. But before I get to the actual game though, it's funny how Toca 2 was only released on PlayStation and PC in Europe and North America. I find it funny because the predecessor was also released on the Game Boy, and seemingly even in Japan as well. So maybe the sales were only good on PlayStation and PC? Who knows? It's quite a shame if the sales of the first game weren't stellar because, as I've stated, it was almost an excellent game. Almost being able to compete with the big dogs like Gran Turismo or Driver, and no, I am not joking. But Toca 2 continues the same almost excellent idea like the first one, even though Toca 2 is the superior game by a lot. Without directly comparing both games, you can go watch my video about the prequel yourself. Toca 2 does quite a few things really right. One major thing I've complained about in the prequel was the driving physics, in the sense of you always driving in that very fine line between having control and losing control out of nowhere. Which is why I was spinning around quite a lot in the first game, because ultimately as soon as you turned a tiny bit too much, then the cars were spinning around like they were Beyblades. Toca 2, sadly, does the same thing, but with a big difference. You actually have far better control over your car, which allows you to drive more consistently, drive a bit more to your limit, and be a bit riskier. Which is why I don't spin as much here. I immediately noticed that the controls feel a bit different, better and more precise. I was surprised to see how I had difficulties keeping the car under full control and win races in the first game, even on Novice, but in Toca 2 I was winning left and right. Well, mostly. However, while by far not as bad, that fine line between being in control and losing control still exists here, and if you go overboard, then have fun spinning. So this still continues to be an issue in the franchise, up until now at least, but again, it's by far not as bad. Heck, I got very frustrated in the first game because of these spin issues, as I called it, but here I actually had fun for the most part. Well, up until now I was just talking about driving the official touring cars. You know, the Honda Accord, that probably is the best car here, the Audi A4, the Renault Megane, etc. But then you also have other races to drive in the Support Car Championship. Here you will drive other cars that are not part of the Touring Car Championship, like the Ford Fiesta, a Lister Storm, etc. However, you have to unlock most of these first. So you start with a Ford Fiesta, and your goal is to get enough points in the course of 4 races to unlock a new support car that you also can drive in single player. If you get enough points, then you might unlock the next support car, so it's best if you win all 4 races for each support car. However, there is a big challenge here, a massive challenge, because remember the driving physics of the first game that got better in this sequel? Well, for the most part, they return for all support cars. So once again, you will always drive with constant fear of spinning out of control, which doesn't help things. Therefore, the frustration from the first game sadly returns with these cars. But then again, luckily, it's only with these cars, because the actual touring cars handle quite well. Graphically, there is not much to say because, yeah, it looks better overall. It just has a few weird things here and there, like clipping, or when you win and you get the ceremony, well, if you wanna call this a ceremony, the people clapping looks rather weird. But then again, this is a game about racing and cars, so who cares about people? The interior of the cars also look quite good and the animations are actually quite impressive. The cars get damaged as well and everything looks quite fine. Seemingly you can even damage the interior of your car as well, but I could never do it completely. I mention this because once you go and make a pit stop to change your tires, you can also fix the rest of your car. This percentage tells how damaged the car is. You can repair it in the box, but of course this will prolong the pit stop. But as far as I could tell, the damage doesn't really seem to affect the performance of the car, nor does the car stop once it took too much damage. But again, I was never able to demolish the car. Since we are talking about damage, a lot of it will be caused by you, but sometimes the opponents will do it for you because they love carnage, especially in the start of the race. They will go apeshit on your ass, so oftentimes it's simply better to stay behind, watch the show and then drive by. But if you decide to hit them back, then don't overdo it because the penalty system continues to be a thing. If you drive in the rear of your opponent with enough force, then you will get warnings and then points deducted, followed by a disqualification if you drove like in Twisted Metal too often. This is a racing simulation after all, therefore just drive properly, or at least try. The penalty system is only relevant in the championship though. In here you will drive 2 races per session. This time around it's a bit different though, because while the first round is the normal race with a number of laps, in the second round you necessarily have to make a pit stop at some point during the race. If you miss it, then you will be disqualified, no questions asked. So be sure to make that pit stop and change those tires. Just driving through the pit stop isn't enough. Pay attention to that. If you get first place during the qualifying session, then you will also get an extra point. Yeah, it's not much, granted, but it can always help, especially because each session requires you to get at least 15 points, and if you fail that, your championship journey is over on the spot. The difficulty also decides how long the championship is. In Novice, you will drive 6 sessions, on Normal you will drive 9, and on Expert you will drive all 13 sessions. And may I remind you that each session has 2 races, so have fun with that. For me though, since I love racing games, I don't mind this at all despite the time it consumes. The Novice difficulty is fairly easy, Normal can be challenging, and Expert will leave you eating dust. As it should be. But still, no, Expert is not impossible, you just have to drive a lot and always be in full control of your car to have a chance of winning. One final thing about the difficulty that I quite like is in the single race, because you will have access to most tracks from the start, but you can't play on normal or expert difficulty at first. First you need to beat Novice to unlock normal, and then beat normal to unlock expert. Yeah, in a way you might say that's just prolonging the game unnecessarily, in quotations, but personally I actually like it. I like that you have to beat a difficulty first before you can drive again in a higher difficulty. even if it's only in single race. Reminds me of Gran Turismo 2 arcade disc a bit. It makes you earn everything you do, and I love it. Now you will also have a challenge mode. Here you will drive the races on a timer and with checkpoints, similar to how rally games work. But no, the driving physics don't change, so they don't get easier or arcade-like. Toca 2 isn't really beginner friendly, so you necessarily need patience and learn how to drive. Master the cars, master the physics, master the courses, master the game. Because once you start getting good at it, then the game is immensely fun. Some final notes to add here. This time around you will have access to profiles of the official drivers at the time, all the teams and even tracks. They even give you tips on how to take each corner on every single track, in case you need help. You know, there are 9 tracks to unlock total on top of the already available. You will have to drive in various weather conditions, and yes, they will affect your performance. So always choose the right tires, even though the game usually does that for you. Well, at least when it comes to tires. You can fiddle around with some other car settings if you want, but I always felt fine with the standard settings. The foggy weather is a bit over the top though, because just look at it. I can't see shit! This almost gives Silent Hill a run for its money. Damn, son! The sound is also quite good. No soundtracks are memorable, but they do the job quite fine. The cars also sound quite good, being it first person, or rather inside the car, or third person. Sometimes the game will give you passwords if you want to try those out. Yeah, it essentially is another unlockable on top of tracks and support cards. And for post-game those passwords might be fun to use, and yeah, they can be. I actually also like the idea of you basically unlocking the passwords as you go along in the game, beating championships and support card challenges and whatever, instead of the gaming hiding the passwords from you and you be lucky enough to find them because you found those passwords on the internet or gaming magazines or whatever. So there you have it, Toca 2 Touring Cars. Another almost excellent game from Codemasters during the PlayStation 1 era. They were really the top dogs during that time alongside Polyphony Digital. This awesome game, similar like the first one to be honest, deserves a place in the PlayStation 1 Racing Gods Hall of Fame because it's that good and that fun.